entitled Manager Bullied Me. He didn't know I was the heir. You're fired. Get out. He pointed a shaky, trembling finger toward the main entrance, his voice a high-pitched scream that ripped through the afternoon quiet. The entire office, a massive open-plan space designed for collaboration and transparency, went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the industrial chic concrete floor. Every single head, dozens of them, turned in unison. All eyes were glued to me. My manager, a man named Marcus Harrison, just stood there, his chest puffed out like a proud pigeon, soaking in the power of the moment he had created. He was the king of this little castle, and he was making a public execution. For months he had been on a relentless mission to break me, to grind me down, to humiliate me in front of our colleagues. It was a slow, methodical campaign, and with this final dramatic outburst he thought he'd finally won. He thought he had shattered my confidence and ended my career. He had no idea how wrong he was. He had absolutely no clue that his trembling finger wasn't just pointing at some low-level disposable data analyst he'd taken a disliking to. It was pointing at the person who owned the very ground he stood on, the heir to the entire multi-billion-dollar corporation he was so desperate to climb. His finger was pointing at his boss. And he had just screamed at him in front of everyone that he was fired. Section 1. The Undercover Heir. It all started 9 months earlier with a solemn promise I made to my grandfather. 40 years ago he founded this company, Sterling Corp., not in a fancy high-rise, but right out of his dusty, cluttered garage. He built it from nothing with his own 2 hands, fueled by coffee and an unbreakable belief in 3 core principles: respect, innovation, and integrity. He always used to say, "Alex, you can't truly lead a company if you don't understand the people who make it work. A skyscraper is only as strong as its foundation, and our foundation is our people." So, when it became clear that I would be the one to take over someday, he sat me down in his study, surrounded by 4 decades of memories. He had one non-negotiable condition for me inheriting the CEO position. I had to spend 1 full year working from the bottom up. I had to use a different name, create a fake backstory, and receive 0 special treatment. He was adamant. I needed to learn the business from the trenches, to see the unvarnished truth of the company, not the polished version presented in a boardroom. I had to earn my place, not just inherit it. So I became Leo Vance. On paper, I was just a recent business school graduate with a decent but intentionally unspectacular resume. I was another hopeful face in the crowd, hired as a junior data analyst. The first few months were a revelation. I kept my head down, did my work diligently, and just listened. It was everything I'd hoped for. I was making genuine friends, people who knew me only as Leo. I learned how things really operated, the unofficial workflows, the interdepartmental politics, the day-to-day challenges, and the small, meaningful wins that never make it into an annual report. I saw the quiet dedication in the late-night emails from a single mother trying to get a project over the line. I saw the genuine friendship in the coffee breaks, where teams would rally around a colleague going through a tough time. I was immensely proud of the compassionate, collaborative culture my grandfather had built. And then, after my first 6-month rotation, I was transferred to the marketing analytics department. My new boss was Marcus Harrison. Marcus was like a cartoon villain of a middle manager, a walking, talking cliché. From the moment I met him, I could tell he was all about appearances. He wore suits that were just a little too shiny, his tie always knotted a little too tightly, as if to choke off any genuine emotion. He was a master at stealing credit for his team's wins, presenting their work as his own in high-level meetings, but he was even quicker to throw someone under the bus for his own mistakes. He would strut around the office, his footsteps unnaturally loud on the flooring, his voice always a bit too boisterous, his laugh always at someone else's expense. He didn't lead, he ruled by fear and intimidation. He had a nasty talent for sniffing out anyone he perceived as a threat or simply an easy target. For reasons I still don't fully understand, he chose me. Maybe it was because I was quiet. Maybe it was because I was competent and he found that threatening. Or maybe he just needed a new punching bag. The bullying wasn't a single event. It was a slow, grinding campaign of psychological warfare designed to wear me down and push me out. It started small with passive-aggressive jabs disguised as feedback. In a team meeting, after I presented a set of perfectly accurate and well-researched numbers, he'd say with a condescending smirk, "Leo, I see you've tried to contribute, which is great, but let's perhaps leave the complex analysis to the senior people who actually understand the nuances." It was a classic move, designed to publicly undermine my credibility and plant a seed of doubt about my competence among my peers. Soon he escalated to outright public humiliation. We were in a huge quarterly presentation with the entire marketing division, maybe 50 people in the room. I was responsible for a small but crucial part of the data. In the middle of the presentation he stopped everything, held up a hand and turned to me. "Hold on," he said, his voice dripping with theatrical disappointment. Leo, your section of the report is riddled with errors. Did you even bother to check this before wasting everyone's time? My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt my face flush hot with embarrassment because I knew I had triple-checked every single cell in that spreadsheet. I had stayed late the night before just to be sure. Later that day, a senior analyst named Sarah, who I respected immensely, quietly pulled me aside at the coffee machine. "Hey," she whispered, "your numbers were perfect." Marcus was looking at an old draft he'd insisted on using 2 weeks ago. "Don't let him get to you." But the damage was done. He never apologized. He just let the entire department believe I was sloppy and incompetent. Then came the isolation. He began a calculated effort to make me invisible. Critical project emails would somehow skip my inbox. I'd find out about important team meetings only after they were already over, seeing the group walking back to their desks, laughing. A new team lunch group chat was created, and I was conspicuously the only person in the department not added to it. I'd sit at my desk eating a sandwich I'd brought from home, while the entire team went out together. It was textbook workplace isolation, a deliberate strategy to make me feel worthless and utterly alone. Simultaneously, he would bury me in an avalanche of work. He'd assign me impossible, soul-crushing deadlines, giving me twice the workload of my peers and demanding it in half the time. It was a setup. He was just waiting for me to fail, for me to miss a deadline or make a mistake under the pressure so he could pounce and declare, "See? I told you he wasn't cut out for this." I could feel his eyes on me from across the office, a constant, hostile presence. The stress was immense. It started bleeding into my personal life. I stopped sleeping through the night, I was irritable with my real friends and family, and I had a knot of anxiety permanently lodged in my stomach. The breaking point, the moment the elastic band finally snapped, came during the final review of the Odyssey campaign. This wasn't just another project. It was the biggest, most expensive marketing push of the year. The company was betting heavily on it, and Marcus's reputation, and his hoped-for promotion, was riding on its success. My job was to do a final check on the projected engagement numbers and, most importantly, the budget allocation. I was working late, the office quiet except for the hum of the servers and the clicking of my keyboard. As I was meticulously going through the main budget spreadsheet, a file that Marcus himself had created and locked for editing, I found an error. It wasn't just an error, it was a catastrophic company-altering error. In the master formula for ad spend, a decimal point was in the wrong place. This wasn't a simple $10,000 mistake. It was a $1 million mistake. The budget for our primary digital ad campaign was off by a factor of 10. We were on track to accidentally spend an extra $1 million we didn't have. I knew that bringing this to his attention was like walking into a lion's den holding a steak. Marcus saw any kind of correction, no matter how helpful, as a personal attack on his authority. But I couldn't let the company my grandfather built just burn $1 million because of one man's ego. I took a deep breath, saved a copy of the file as proof, and walked to his glass-walled office. I knocked quietly. "Mr. Harrison," I started, trying to keep my voice as steady and non-confrontational as possible. I was reviewing the Odyssey budget for the final sign-off, and I think I might have found a small typo in one of the formulas. We should probably correct it before this goes to the board tomorrow. His face went dark instantly. He didn't see an employee doing his job diligently. He saw a subordinate challenging him. He snatched the printout from my hand. As his eyes scanned the page, I saw it. A flicker of pure panic as he recognized the mistake, quickly masked by a wave of incandescent rage. He wasn't mad about the mistake. He was furious that I was the one who had found it. He didn't say a word to me. He stormed out of his office, walked directly to my desk, and slammed the report down with a loud bang that made several people jump. "Who in the hell do you think you are?" he boomed, his voice echoing through the silent office. "Are you trying to undermine me? Are you trying to make me look bad in front of the board?" I stood up, my own sense of calm surprising me. "No," I said, my voice clear and firm. "I'm trying to prevent a $1 million mistake." That was it. He completely snapped. His face turned a blotchy, beet-red color, and a vein I'd never seen before started throbbing on his forehead. "You're done," he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "I will not be disrespected by some arrogant know-it-all junior analyst who thinks he's better than me. You are fired. Security will escort you from the building." He stood there, panting slightly, looking triumphant. My coworkers just stared, their faces a mixture of shock, pity, and fear. I took a long, slow, deep breath. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just let his words hang in the dead air. Then I very calmly reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The quietest sound in the room was now the most powerful. I looked Marcus Harrison dead in the eye and said, "I don't think you have the authority to make that decision." He let out a sharp, disbelieving bark of a laugh. "Oh, I don't? I'm the department head. My authority is absolute in this department. Think I do. Now get out before I have you physically thrown out. I allowed a slight knowing smile to touch my lips. No, Marcus, you really don't. I scrolled through my contacts to a name at the top of my favorites list, pressed the call button, activated the speakerphone and set the phone down on my desk. A familiar, warm and powerful voice answered almost immediately. Alex, is everything all right? You don't usually call me during the workday. The entire office, including Marcus, froze at the sound of that name. Alex, not Leo. I could see the confusion ripple across the faces of my colleagues. I'm fine, grandfather, I said, my voice now resonating with a calm clarity that filled the room. But there's been a situation here at Sterling Corporation. It appears my employment has been terminated. My supervisor, Mr. Marcus Harrison, has just fired me. The color completely drained from Marcus's face. It was like watching a statue turn to sand. His arrogant, triumphant smirk melted into a grotesque mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He looked from the phone on my desk to my face, the pieces slowly, painfully clicking into place in his mind. Grandfather? The only grandfather anyone ever associated with this company was its founder and the current chairman of the board. There's been a misunderstanding, Marcus stammered, his voice cracking into a high-pitched squeak that was pathetic to hear. A grave misunderstanding. It was a drill. A surprise management exercise. To test leadership response. My grandfather's voice, now stripped of all its warmth and as cold and sharp as ice, cut through the speaker, slicing through Marcus's babbling. Mr. Harrison, my grandson does not lie. And I have zero tolerance for managers who rule by fear and bully my employees. Let alone my own family. Stay right where you are. The head of HR and corporate security will be with you in 5 minutes. Do not leave your desk. The line went dead. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Marcus looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had been annihilated. The bully who had been so full of himself just moments ago had completely crumbled, reduced to a stammering, terrified mess. His petty kingdom had been built on a foundation of fear, and now he was the one who was truly, deeply afraid. That it's funny how quickly a house of cards tumbles when you pull out the single card holding it all up, isn't it? Seeing that smug arrogance on his face curdle into pure, unfiltered panic was more satisfying than any shouting match could ever be. If you've ever dreamed of a moment like this with a toxic boss, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We've got plenty more stories of karma and justice coming your way. Just as my grandfather had promised, not 5 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and 3 figures strode purposefully into our department. Sarah Jenkins, the formidable head of HR, and 2 stone-faced security guards I recognized from the main lobby. They walked right past my desk without a glance and went straight to Marcus. He was officially suspended, pending a full and thorough investigation into his conduct. He started to protest, to apologize, to make excuses, but Miss Jenkins cut him off with a single sharp gesture. His reign of terror was over, extinguished in an instant. The investigation was swift and decisive. My detailed account, backed up by months of quiet documentation, was just the tip of the iceberg. Once word got out that Marcus was suspended and that the chairman's own grandson had been his target, the floodgates opened. Other employees, finally feeling safe enough to speak, came forward with their own stories. There were accounts of credit stealing, verbal abuse, sexist comments, and a pattern of manipulation that went back years. It turned out my experience wasn't unique. I was just the one who was still standing when the music stopped. They uncovered a clear pattern of systemic abuse that had led to an abnormally high turnover rate and had completely destroyed morale in his department for years. Marcus was fired for cause. There was no big, final confrontation. He was terminated via a formal letter from HR. His career at Sterling Corp, and likely in the industry, took a nosedive not because I wanted personal revenge, but because he was facing the natural consequences of his own actions. He had, in essence, fired himself long before he ever shouted at me. The few people who had supported me in small, quiet ways were visibly relieved. Sarah, the analyst who had validated my data, was promoted to interim head of the department to help rebuild the trust that Marcus had so thoroughly broken. As for me, my undercover assignment was over. I didn't jump into a corner office or demand a fancy title. That entire experience had changed my perspective profoundly. The next week, I walked back into the office as Alex Sterling. I met with the board and with HR, and using my first-hand experience as Leo Vance, we began drafting a new, comprehensive, zero-tolerance anti-bullying and workplace harassment policy. This time it wouldn't be just corporate jargon. It would have real, enforceable consequences, an anonymous and protected system for reporting abuse, and mandatory leadership training for all managers focused on empathy and ethical conduct. My year in the trenches showed me that a company's greatest asset isn't its patents or its market share. It's the people who show up every day. Protecting them isn't just good ethics. It's the best business strategy there is. My time as Leo Vance taught me more than 4 years of business school ever could have. It taught me that a title doesn't automatically grant you power. It grants you responsibility. Marcus Harrison thought power was about intimidation, about making a scene and demanding obedience. He was fundamentally wrong. Real power is quiet. It's the integrity you maintain when no one is watching you. It's the courage to do the right thing, especially when it's hard. And most of all, it's about earning respect through your actions, not demanding fear through your position. My grandfather built this entire company on that one simple idea, and I was going to spend the rest of my career making absolutely sure we never, ever forgot it again. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? How would you have handled Marcus? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you on our next video.